right, everybody. Welcome into the Southern Football Podcast with Drew and Steve. We had a great opening week of football, so we're going to just sort of touch on some of the games. First, there's the good. That's the best games being the first one being Houston, Oklahoma, 11 a.m. kick. In my opinion, it's not really an upset. As Houston's coming off of a big win against Florida State in their bowl game. They prove they can get the talent. Tom Herman's probably the hottest coach in the country. He's off of that Urban Meyer tree, like a lot of others that we've seen.
Yeah, I think that you're looking at a team who has a lot to prove on the national stage for a couple of reasons. One, trying to make that run as a team that can get into the playoff. But coupled with that, I mean, you're talking about a team who's actively trying to get into one of the power conferences.
They're actually petitioning or campaigning, I guess, to get into the Big 12.
And I tell you this much, man, with looking at that kind of explosive offense that they had, with a solid defense to back it up, I mean, I'd love to see it. I mean, I think they bring an interesting dynamic.
Definitely, yeah. I'll say I don't think they're quite as good as this team, but I think they're the best non-Power 5 team since Urban Meyer's last Utah team with Alex Smith.
Definitely a lot of similarities with that type of offense. So, I mean, again, I think it brings an interesting dynamic to the conference. I personally, I'd love to see it, but I agree with you. Definitely not, in my opinion, either an upset. I mean, Houston's a very good football team. We saw that last year. We're seeing it again this year. And, kind of like I was saying, I think earlier on is I've never been sold on Bob Stoops being able to win the big game.
He's won his fair share of big games, but I mean...
Oklahoma dismantled Alabama a couple of years ago, in postseason play, and good on them for that. But, just overall, I mean, if I'm an Oklahoma fan, is it time to start? I guess we need to see the rest of the season, but is it time for Bob Stoops maybe to kind of for that era to end? I mean, I think, I think there's going to be a lot of good young coaches out there available, and I'm certainly not saying, hey, jump ship from Bob Stoops. Right. I mean, he's a great coach and he's built a phenomenal program. But just kind of that elite level, is Oklahoma, for example, are they on the same level as, an Alabama, something to that effect right now? I just don't think so. And I think that's where, if I'm an Oklahoma fan, that's where you ultimately want to be. Right, I haven't seen them.
Well, it's not just where you want to be. That's the standard.
Exactly.
Part of that was set by Bob Stoops, and Barry Switzer and Bud Wilkinson and guys like that. So, I mean, they've got a long, long history of that.
Right on.
Also, we had the Georgia-North Carolina game. Tremendous performance from Nick Chubb. They were down 2 scores late in the third quarter and came back and won. I thought Jacob Eason looked really good in his first action as a collegiate athlete.
And exciting today because, I mean, he's getting, he got the nod.
He's getting his first start today against, Furman or whoever it is. So.
Yeah, well, I think Watford, isn't it?
Watford. Okay.
Oh gosh, I can't remember if it's Watford.
But he looked good. Had 130 yards and a touchdown pass. I mean, there's not many guys that can say that. And physically, he reminds me of how Matthew Stafford looked actually in his first year at Georgia.
Yeah, I mean Georgia, exciting in the East. I mean, you got Nick Chubb who just lit it up last week. A little bit slower start, obviously, from the Georgia offense than you would want to see. But, Nick Chubb coming out, certainly looking like he's going to be the one to really challenge Leonard Fournette, maybe for that crown of best all around in the SEC. And I think last week he certainly put on that show as, especially considering LSU struggled, up at Lambeau against Wisconsin. So, certainly something to look at there. I mean, another phenomenal performance, which we saw echoed again. Lamar Jackson.
This guy.
Holy cow!
I think he's the best athlete at quarterback I've seen since Michael Vick. I mean, if you're talking, not a better football player than Cam Newton, but he's a better athlete, I think. I mean, if you're talking like top end speed and the jukes and stuff like that in the open field.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. I mean, you talk not only the speed and like just the side to side, but for God's sakes, he not only did he hurdle a guy last night, but he made it look like it was just easy.
Oh, I know, yeah. He had 600 plus yards of offense in that game last night. I can't remember the last time I saw that from one guy. And he had albeit against Charlotte, he had 8 total touchdowns in the first half. He had 3-6 and ran 2 touchdowns in.
I mean, incredible numbers. And I think the fun thing is going to be, even just a couple of weeks ago when we started the show, I mean, I certainly didn't have him as a potential Heisman winner, but good God, if he keeps this up, he's going to be a runaway.
There's a couple of tests. I mean, they play Florida State. They play, I believe they play North Carolina and Miami. So we'll certainly see. I mean, if he can, I mean, I'm not saying he has to do this, but I mean, if he can throw up 400 total yards and 4 touchdowns against FSU or something. I think he'd be absolutely invited to New York. If he can
God, not only shoot,
as long as he doesn't get hurt or something. I mean,
performances like this. I mean, he might be the only guy invited to New York.
Right.
But, No, and that's I do want to touch on that. It's an interesting point you make. I mean, of course, if you're the Louisville coaching staff, if you're if you're Petrino sitting there looking at this kid who is a phenomenal athlete, runs outside, hurdles a player, and you gotta be cautionary. Like you just mentioned, these teams that you're going to end up facing in the ACC, you run around too much and you get one too many shots. You may not. I'm not saying you're going to break a leg, break an arm, but even a mild concussion is going to put him on the bench for a week.
Oh yeah,
potentially more. So I mean, that's the only thing that I would caution Louisville against right now is, hey, let's not put pressure on a guy where he's going to be expected to rush for 200 yards a game and throw for 4 because. Ultimately, the more he's out of the pocket, the higher the odds that he's going to end up missing.
Of course, and I think he really benefits from Bobby Petrino's system. Petrino, I actually think he's a lot like Lane Kiffin in that he likes to feature players. So, like if he has a guy that he thinks is a great football player, then he's going to put the offense, sort of in his hands.
Right.
Like Kiffin's done with even skill players like Cooper and. Some other guys we're going to talk about a little bit later. But, another phenomenal performance from the Alabama defense. Like we said before, in the first couple of podcasts, I guess. I said before the season started, I think this could be the best secondary that Saban's ever had at LSU or otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, to touch on that point, the thing that I was excited about to couple that is I think we finally got a front group that's really going to be able to get upfield. Yeah. And get upfield in a big way. Not just get upfield and kind of be a body. But we saw an Alabama team that was in USC's backfield almost the entire game, and we're putting people into the dirt. And I think, again, that's going to and as we saw in the USC game in the first quarter, Alabama's offense, to say that they struggled is an understatement. But the thing to me that was exciting is that even if we're going to be in those types of situations with young offensive players who don't necessarily have enough game time snaps, we're looking at a situation where that defense is going to keep us in the game.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, a huge win. What we mentioned going into that game was talking about how Alabama's probably going to be in a situation where they're going to have good field position more often than not, which is going to take the pressure off of young quarterbacks and not force them to make bad decisions early on. Now, granted, we see Jalen Hurts, Alabama's first drive where he has the ball, a turnover, but Alabama's first 5 drives, I believe, were 4 turnovers and a punt, if I'm not mistaken, or 3 turnovers and a punt.
Grief. Yeah.
Of course, after that, we see Jalen Hurts rolling out to the right and just complete, panic, as I'm watching the game. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, he's wide open for a touchdown. Yeah. So
but that's the thing about Alabama's offense. Or really any Lane Kiffin offense, you look up and it's 52 points on the board, like it's nothing.
Yeah, and I think to me that the only thing which Saban touched on post game and in a later interview that was concerning. We had some big plays, but overall, I still think the offense was a bit inconsistent, especially in the first half.
That's what I thought, too. I mean, you can look at the box score and see, 63-yard run, 45-yard catch, stuff like that. A lot of it came from that, so you want to see those consistent, 8-10 play drives.
Well, the running game, getting a little bit more production there. I mean,
you're right.
With Harris running for, I think it was 9 rushes, 138 yards. Right. So you're looking at a guy who's averaging over 10 yards a run against, everybody was saying that USC's defense was going to be what might keep them in the game. And just our running game was able to gash him open. Our Darius Stewart I don't remember his total receiving yards, game. But 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards.
It was like 113 yards, I think, and 2 touchdowns.
So I mean, I'm happy with the offensive. Again, we need to be a little bit more consistent, especially considering some of the teams we're going to play later. This season, I think that consistency and just that steady grind that Saban is known for is going to be what really is a hallmark for us. But
that and honestly, man, I gotta call out one individual player. I think Marlon Humphrey. He reminds me a lot of Darrelle Revis I mean, I think that could be the best player in the secondary that Saban's ever had, like individual player.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I'm really excited to kind of see where, you're looking at a player who's not only, you go back and look at the kind of break down the USC game, a player who is consistently in the right position where he needs to be, breaking up plays, and is still able to get into the open field and make a tackle.
You're right. Like, to me, the thing that sets him apart from the D. Milliners and Dre Kirkpatricks of the world, like, guys didn't throw to their side of the field. This guy's in on every play, really.
Right.
I mean, that's, and so, I mean, you see what happened with, especially Milliner. Like, Milliner might not even be on the Jets team when they make their final cuts.
Yeah, and I think, again, Marlon Humphrey has shown already just that he's got that situational awareness, which is so crucial.
That's
for a secondary player.
Yeah, he's got the instincts like Darrelle Revis.
Right.
That's more what I meant by that. But and another phenomenal performance. I actually didn't put it in the outline. Totally forgot. That's on me. But I mean, what about DeAndre Francois at Florida State? This kid is. He had almost 500 yards in his first start. I mean, to me, I mean that's got to be. He's probably National Player of the Week, really.
Yeah, I would think so. And I mean, again, you look at these quarterbacks where you question, hey, if he's outside the pocket a lot, what could be the potential downfall there? But you're absolutely right. I mean, the kid proved a couple of things. One, he's going to be able to make the passes that he needs to pass. He's got the legs. I mean, he's got wheels. He's accurate. And I didn't really see too, with the exception of a couple of plays. I mean, you'd almost think that, Jimbo Fisher would, some question marks that we saw. But overall, I mean, I didn't really see anything alarming. There was nothing to me that screamed, I'm a super young player. I'm going to make bad decisions. And, I mean, and that's a huge win, I think, for Florida State.
Oh, I agree. And, to me, moving in the pocket and stuff, he looked like Donovan McNabb, really. I mean, he's sort of a compact, sort of stocky guy. It actually, I remember his recruitment. It actually came down to Auburn and Florida State were his top two guys, or top two choices. But that moves us on. I'm sorry to get off track there, but but that moves us on to Shane Buechele from Texas. I mean, this is a program that's really, really struggled ever since Colt McCoy left.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is that this is really one of the first big times that they've got a phenomenal quarterback. I mean, 18 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, how many 18-year-olds put a team on their back?
And he's throwing to juniors and seniors that have been there for 3 and 4 and some of them 5 years,
Right.
I mean, that's, that to me, that's a testament to him and to Charlie Strong's leadership to say, this is his team, basically.
Yeah, and I think, I was going to say, I mean, that's the thing to me that if I'm a Texas fan, I'm the most excited about is that you got an 18-year-old that came onto the field and took charge of the offense.
Yeah.
So not only what is he going to be able to do this year, but you start to think about the potential for sophomore and junior, potentially senior year as well. If he, if things go the way he does, he may not be around senior year.
Sure,
but you look at a kid who's already taken control and command of a team, and to me, the thing that's exciting, not just to see his development and his growth, obviously already making good decisions and leading a team. But what does that do for you off the field in the offseason? Well, it makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to go after these top wide receiver recruits.
Well, not only that, but you're showing other quarterbacks that will succeed him, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is our identity.
Exactly. And I think that, I think Texas, are we seeing, these next few weeks are going to be pivotal, but if they can keep these pieces of the puzzle put together, we're on the verge of seeing Texas very quickly go back to that elite status.
And you can get there quickly too. And honestly, this is what he did, sort of, as far as laying the foundation at Louisville after Steve Crabthorpe destroyed what Bobby Petrino had done. But I mean, this is he brought Teddy Bridgewater in and said, "Hey, we're the young guys are going to play." Period.
And these are the best players.
Right? The best guys are going to play. Yeah. It's not going to be about seniority or anything.
And I think that like you mentioned, how quickly it can happen. When I was a student in Alabama in 2005, 6, 7, and I'm looking at the team that we have then, and just this debacle, and then Saban's first year, I don't want to say struggling because he had to rebuild and sure, but then in an instant, we're looking at a team that's competing for a national championship almost every single year. And again, I'm not saying that Texas is going to do the exact same thing, but if they keep these things in place and they're able to continue on the path that they are, they are absolutely going to be competing for that conference championship every single year.
No, I mean, a good family friend of mine was actually on that 2007 team, Saban's first team.
Right.
And, I heard from his mouth, like, Saban basically went in there after they got beat by Louisiana Monroe, and he said, I can't replace you now, but trust me, it's coming. The guys that played in this game will not be out there come this time next year. And so, that's, he's blunt about it, and that's what I think, sort of Charlie Strong did probably when they got beat by, they got beat 24-0 by Iowa State last year,
Right.
So, I would imagine, that's a compliment to, to Strong and Saban that they have the guts to do something like that.
Well, I think, on that note, looking at other games last week, I think, I know that you probably have a few choice words for the Auburn team and the Auburn faithful. So, I'm just going to completely turn it over to you because I don't know if this is a rant or a vent or a call for some jobs. But
well, I've done plenty of all of that on message boards and social media and stuff. But this is going to start our worst performances of last week's segment off. This is Steve's rant of the week. Drew had his last week, so now it's my turn. Auburn's offensive game plan, I do that with finger quotes if you want to call it that. It's easily the worst I've ever seen. Worse than the one against USC in 2003 that netted 0 points. I don't know who thinks it's a good idea to rotate 3 quarterbacks in the same series, but it's just ridiculous. I mean, these efforts on defense don't come along very often under Malzahn at Auburn. We had 399, or held Clemson rather, to 399 total yards and only 19 points. So, honestly, it's totally wasted. I mean, we should have won that game by, 10 points or so.
Well, and the confusing thing is, like you mentioned, with that, like with the quarterback rotation, it causes chaos on the offensive line because no one gets used to the snap cadence, the timing of the receiver routes. That showed.
And you think that Gus in his 4th year would know something like that.
Yeah.
But he does have an idiot like Rhett Lashley calling the plays for him. So it might make it around $900,000 a year at that. So sorry.
Well, it's just no. I think you're right. It's something that as an Alabama fan, of course, when it comes down to the Iron Bowl, would love want my team to win every year. Of
course,
but other than that, for football, for our state's economy, everything, I'd love to see Alabama be undefeated every year.
When you go to those events at the Hound on weekends and there's nobody there.
Yeah, it's
on football week if they don't travel to the games.
It's concerning, and I think that we touched on it, with the first show of our first episode of the show this year. And you really start looking at the top of the program, and you go all the way up to Jay Jacobs, and you look at just these just terrible decisions. Like you said, you have an offensive coordinator making almost $1 million a year for what?
And honestly, it's hard to tell when he's calling the plays and when Gus is calling the plays. But Gus will look with this surprised, WTF look, what were you doing?
Which in and of itself, though, is a problem because
you're right.
As a fan, if you don't even know who's calling the plays, you got to sit here and you're scratching your head. Well, why do we have an offensive coordinator? The coaches,
Right. Yeah.
And it's just concerning because Auburn does have some extremely talented athletes, and they're not a scrub school by any means.
Yeah.
And you just look at these boneheaded decisions of three quarterbacks in one series. As opposed to now, Saban has been vocal over at Alabama saying, "Hey, we probably will see 3 quarterbacks at some point this year."
Yeah, but not the same series.
Yeah.
Good grief. When he said all 3 quarterbacks are going to play, I think everybody was fine with that. But how they played them was ridiculous. You would have even in the same sets of downs quarterbacks going in, dude. It's ridiculous.
No, and I think that that Auburn University needs radical change from the top down. I'm not going to sit here and get on the bandwagon as far as it's time to fire Gus. That's the thing. As an outsider, I don't even know that it's entirely Gus's problem. That's the concerning thing is that you look at just boneheaded decisions all the way around right now with the athletics program as it relates to football.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a lot of serious question marks as far as what's going on, who's making the decisions from the administrative side of running the football program all the way through, again, the play calling on the field. It just seems like the entire program is in a state of confusion. And I can't even imagine being a player right now at Auburn, honestly, not even knowing what is going on, seemingly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, in my experience as an Auburn fan, / alumni, we're going to see that sooner rather than later. I mean, like it or not, people are going to start to speak out, and
right.
I don't know. It's just a matter of time.
Well,
but anyway, that's all I've got on that. So we're going to move on to Mississippi State losing to South Alabama.
Yeah, let's talk about
one of the bigger wins for the state in a while. Honestly, I mean that's as far as as far as how big of an underdog they were like 24.5-point underdogs or something like that. Maybe even more than that.
Yeah, and I think, I think that one of the big key points that you were, discussing or whatever is, yes, it's a signature win, but for Mississippi State, giving a quarterback only 3 passing attempts to try to – and you spent an entire offseason building an offense around this guy, you're going to give him 3 pass attempts and then pull the plug?
Right.
I mean, to me, that's a coaching problem. Instead of taking a player and sitting him on the sideline and going, hey, man, look, short memory, shake it off. We got to go out there and win this. We want to go out there and do what we do, what we practice.
I mean, above all, we've got to go out there and win this game. We can't lose to South Alabama. Because, I mean, honestly, dude, for Mississippi State's program, those are the ones they depend on to get to bowl games. I mean, that could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you don't win the easy games, then all of a sudden you go from a potential 7-win season to a 5-win.
Right, yeah. You're going to have to go look at going into, Tuscaloosa and getting a win or
Fayetteville. I was about to say.
That's what I mean. It's a lot easier to pull off a win against South Alabama.
And the scary part is, too, the other side effect down the road is you start to look at these, look at your potential recruits, your incoming freshman class, and you might as well just sit in that front office, stare out the window, and watch the cars drive by and keep going to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
I mean that's a real
for the good ones.
That's a real problem. If you additionally to not only the revenue, but potentially some of these maybe 3-star recruits or even 4-star, 5-star guys that may not have made the grade somewhere else.
Yeah, borderline. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of them, watching Last Chance U that'll just bypass that and then say, you know what, I think I'll try my chances and
exactly.
Maybe go to an Auburn or Alabama or wherever.
The other really just awful performance that I want to talk about with you is, I say it with a grin ear to ear, because if there's one thing I do not like, it is the University of Tennessee.
Right.
It's funny looking at kind of that performance. I mean, honestly, it was App State's game to lose in the fourth quarter, and they found a way to lose. But you look at, Josh Dobbs' performance was just beyond awful. The turnover situation, granted, he didn't get much help from the play calling, and that's kind of what we talked about, back in that first episode is, these question marks at the coaching level for Tennessee. With Butch there at the helm, you scratch your head and you think to yourself, what on earth are some of these guys doing? Where do the plays come from? Where is the decision making to start passing the ball inside the 2-3 yard line on third down?
That's, not only that, dude, but like Josh Dobbs, he completed that long pass before the end of the first half for the touchdown, to give them the lead over App State, for God's sake. But that was the only quote unquote play that he made that I can remember. That's.
Oh yeah, going back and thinking through it, yeah. I don't know if. Did they have any other plays that were over 20-yard, 25-yard plays the whole game?
Not that I remember. Like we mentioned before, Jalen Hurd ran for, I think it was 116, but he had like 27 or 28 carries. So the offensive line played like garbage. That's pretty obvious.
Right.
But in particular, Josh Dobbs, being from the quarterback position, that's a position you can, break the pocket and make plays that way. And that's confusing because we've seen him do that against Alabama, against against better teams, a lot better teams than App State.
And that's the thing. Again, a big concern if you're a Tennessee fan is the team this year going to be the epitome of playing to the level of your competition? Because if so, then if you're going to instantly turn every game into a coin flip, that's going to be a real problem trying to get to anything postseason.
So you might roll out there one week and beat Georgia, and then go out there and just get destroyed by UTC or something. I don't know. It's crazy, man. But do you have anything else you wanted to add on the worst performances of the week?
Worst performances of the week. Yeah, oddly enough, not related to a team, but here the one thing we're fortunate about in the lovely city of Birmingham is we get to listen to the Feinbaum show every day of the week. And one thing I'm not going to go completely off on a rant per se, but one thing I do want to make abundantly clear is to some of the Alabama fans out there that call in, the Tammys of the world and people like that. Not to call anybody out, but just to keep things into perspective, Alabama looked really good against USC in the second half. We seemed to put things together. Definitely some question marks, but one thing I get so tired of hearing is we have one big win early in the year, and everybody's like, "Oh, we better win a national championship."
No, yeah, no, you're right.
It is just completely absurd to me.
It gets old. I mean, that's for every fan base that has a big win, early, especially early in the season.
It seems to be worse for Alabama right now, and I guess I just get, as somebody that I consider, Alabama, I guess, is known for having a lot of what we call sidewalk alumni.
Yeah, and those are the ones that behave that way too.
Right. It's just frustrating because in the past, the past 7 years we've been to 4 national championships and won 3 of them. And it's just you sit here and you just kind of scratch your head and you're like, we've done so well and played at such an elite level, but for that to be the expectation every year just seems to be, it just gets old. So just
Yeah,
just shut up and enjoy the games.
No, you're right. I mean, like if you don't approach the games with enjoyment, then you're going to sit there and be disappointed. I don't know.
Oh, it's going to be maximum butthurt every week.
Right? Yeah, I know.
So I guess this is kind of fun. We're going to wrap up college football talk and talk about something that really, honestly, makes my job worthwhile, and it's to be in a fantasy league with coworkers. If nothing else, is just to talk smack to people. So let's dive into some fantasy talk for a week.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to give our top picks. Mine were Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, and Rob Gronkowski, and not in that order necessarily, but
obviously the Gronk monster. Nothing wrong with that pick.
Well, yeah. Oh well, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but I mean, of course, he's out this week. Anyway, my fantasy tip is I always try to get a quarterback in his primary target. That's what I did with Blake Bortles this year, and I also got Tom Brady, which I can plug in there in bye weeks to throw to Gronk. So.
Yeah, well, and I think on my team, we're in a keeper league, so I've had Aaron Rodgers for 3 years now. Obviously, last year had some struggles in there, but
man, that's because of Jordy Nelson being out.
Yeah, and I think now with maybe all those pieces of the puzzle back together, I mean, at the end of the day, I got a Super Bowl winning quarterback and somebody who is arguably one of the best passers.
Consistent.
And Devontae Freeman for Atlanta had a phenomenal year last year, and I'm hoping that my thought this year is with Roddy White being gone over to Tennessee, which by the way. Upper management at Tennessee Titans. Thank you so much for taking Roddy White out of the Falcons lineup for us, and especially for that amount of money. That seems incredibly outlandish to me, but whatever. But point being, I think Devontae Freeman's going to get a little bit more of the workload. Especially down in the red zone where you're looking at Julio Jones potentially being double covered or with a safety over the top and throwing into the end zone. I hope that they're able to spread it out and get him some carries, but. Yeah. Another, kind of question mark on my team that I'm really curious. I haven't after last night's performance, and thank God he's on the bench. But I picked up late in the draft. I picked up Devontae Booker, who's the backup running back in Denver, thinking that. I'm an injury away from a starter who's going to get a lot of workload. Of course, last night his only touch was a fumble, so negative 2 points, but. Young guy needs to learn to just protect the football, but that one I think might be a fun sleeper pick halfway through the year.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if that's your, one of your picks, I mean, if Chris Anderson gets as much work as he did Thursday night, then maybe he will. I mean, I don't want to see people get hurt, but I mean, that
was the thought. Yeah, I mean, that was, if nothing else, one of the, maybe the ability to vulture some touchdowns.
Right. Maybe he'll get worn out, and Devontae Booker will get the goal line carries. But also, we're going to give our sleeper picks. I've got a bunch of suspension guys. So, like I said before, I've got Tom Brady. Also, Josh Gordon could still be available in a lot of leagues. maybe he got pushed to the bottom of the board or whatever. People don't realize that he's draftable, I guess. But he looked fantastic in preseason. It seems like him and Robert Griffin have a lot of chemistry there. But I mean, Josh Gordon's a guy that's played with like 10 different quarterbacks, and he's always put up great numbers. So
obviously he's extremely talented, and like you said, I mean, regardless of who's throwing the ball, seems to be pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a guy that was. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're not at all.
I mean, this is a guy that led the NFL in receiving yards with not one, not two, but 3 different quarterbacks in the lineup at one time throwing to him. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I think, I've got Jamal Charles, who's obviously out currently, but I don't know if that's much of a sleeper pick other than just crossing the fingers. But from the same, I've also got Jeremy Maclin. So I'm hoping he's able to put these pieces together. And I think with Alex Smith, the type of offense they're going to run, I like Jeremy Maclin. Maybe obviously he's an outside target, but I'm hoping maybe a little bit more of those short, the slants, the sluggos, the ins and outs, things like that. These short passes for Alex Smith. I think Jeremy Maclin's going to see the majority of those targets. So I'm pretty excited about that. The other thing is I've got, which I am hoping is going to pay off later on this year. People in my league, listen up. I have 2 phenomenal quarterbacks sitting on my bench. Speaking of Alex Smith and Andy Dalton. So, as we approach week 5 and 6, when some of you guys are going to need starting quarterbacks, either for bye weeks or injuries, hey, I'm ready to talk business at the table.
There you go. And also another sleeper pick's Chris Ivory. I mean, T.J. Yeldon had a good rookie year, but they brought Chris Ivory in to sort of carry the load. And T.J. Yeldon's going to spell him, like you said. Maybe he can vulture some touchdowns from Chris Ivory, but as far as a 20-25 carry a game back, I would say Chris Ivory's right there.
Yeah, completely agree.
But I mean, do you have any sleeper picks for other than what you've already mentioned?
Not on my squad. No, I mean, I'm hoping my draft strategy is generally to get other than Booker maybe later on this year being kind of a sleeper pick. That'd be about it.
Okay, so what about your rant of the week? Do you have one or?
No, man. I think the one thing that I would like to mention is a cautionary tale to the entire Seattle Seahawks lineup who thinks that it might be a good idea to take a knee and sit out of the national anthem on the anniversary of September 11th, the largest domestic terrorist attack in U.S. history.
I haven't heard about this.
Yes, in a what I can only consider a complete lack of anything resembling intelligence. It looks like the entire Seattle Seahawks roster may decide to take a knee or something during on tomorrow on the anniversary of September the 11th. So
man, I had not heard that. That's disturbing.
I mean, I think it's just honestly, in my opinion, it's incredibly classless.
Yeah.
And it's to think about the sacrifice made by the men and women.
You're going to have fire department,
fire, police, medical, all those people that
military people there.
It's unbelievable to me to think that would even be considered. So it's not as much of a rant as it is that I just if the Seattle Seahawks go through with that, I think they will probably, in my mind, go down as the most classless team in NFL history. I mean, I think it's appalling to me to think that on the anniversary of September 11th that would be a political statement that they would try to make.
Has Pete Carroll said anything about this?
Not that I've seen yet. Okay. No, I mean, some of the.
I can't imagine he would be.
Some of the senior leadership on the team seems to think that they're going to go through with it, and I can't imagine not honoring the sacrifice made by all those the countless men and women. And honestly, I've always been back and forth with Roger Goodell playing judge, jury, executioner in the NFL, but by God, if they go through with this, I would hope that he steps up and issues some serious penalties.
Right. Well, dude, if you need, I thought about this the other day, and about people taking a knee or, that's, admittedly that's better than sitting down during the national anthem, but just go back and watch the, YouTube clip from the September 11th, I guess the post 9/11 football games that day. Dude, there were, it was, I guess it would have been like around the 20th or so of September of 2001. There were people, crying, stuff like that. Nobody would even, that wasn't even a thought at that time.
Yeah, and that's, again, I think that's the disturbing thing to me. Yeah. So it's not as much of a rant as it is a caution to that team to, not that any Seahawks are going to catch wind of this podcast before tomorrow or anything, but by God, I mean,
if they do, they're probably going to lose anyway.
Yeah. If they do, I hope that they get the biggest beatdown in NFL history.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I really hope that if they do go through with this, that I really do hope that Roger Goodell puts forth some pretty stiff penalties.
It's because he does have the authority to do that.
Exactly.
If he doesn't like what they're doing. So anyway, all right, we're going to wrap it up. Do you have anything else you wanted to add beyond that?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so we got some outro music for you here.
Roll Tide.
And War Eagle.